Edinburgh, Scotland, 2005. A city filled with history and culture has become home to Annie Borjesson, a 30-year-old Swedish woman determined to improve her English and discover new horizons. Lively, outgoing, and energetic, Annie quickly made friends in this new place. However, none of them could have imagined that her life would be cut short so suddenly and under such mysterious circumstances. Annie Borjesson was born in 1975 in the town of Trollhättan, Sweden. She grew up in a friendly and loving family who always supported her endeavors. Annie was an active and inquisitive child, interested in all things new. Her parents, Anna and Lars, instilled in her a love of learning and traveling, which later greatly influenced her life path. Annie attended a local school where she quickly proved herself as an able student. She was particularly passionate about languages, and this passion led her to study English, French, and Spanish. Her aptitude for languages helped her not only in her studies, but also in socializing with people from different countries. Apart from her studies, Annie had a passion for sports. She practiced swimming and track and field, which helped her to keep fit and develop discipline. These activities became an integral part of her life and helped her develop resilience and determination. After graduating from high school, Annie decided to take a short break from her studies and travel around Europe. She visited France, Spain, and Italy, where she not only improved her language skills, but also learned about the culture and traditions of these countries. Traveling helped her broaden her horizons and learn more about the world. Upon returning from her travels, Annie enrolled at the University of Gothenburg, where she studied international relations. Her choice of major was no accident. Annie had always been interested in politics and social sciences. At university, she remained active in student life, joining several clubs and organizations. After graduation, Annie got a job at an international company in Stockholm. She worked in the public relations department and quickly established herself as a responsible and competent employee. Her language skills and international experience were key factors in her career development. In the fall of 2004, Annie decided to move to Edinburgh, Scotland, to improve her English language skills and gain new experience abroad. She enrolled in English courses and found a job at a travel center. Life in Edinburgh proved to be interesting and fulfilling for her. By that time, the incredibly talented young woman had already mastered 6 foreign languages and was also a vocalist of a musical group and had the opportunity to perform at concerts for visitors to the center where she worked. Annie quickly made new friends and familiarized herself with the local culture. Her social skills and openness helped her to adapt easily to her new surroundings. She often attended cultural events, concerts, and museums, enjoying life in this historic city. However, everything changed on December 3, 2005, when Annie Borjesson arrived at Prestwick Airport to fly home to Sweden. Her final actions before the tragic accident leave many questions, but a few key moments are known, reconstructed from witness statements and CCTV footage. On a cold winter morning, Annie woke up in her apartment in Edinburgh. She had spent the morning packing and preparing for her trip. Her suitcase was packed neatly, containing her favorite books from the library in Swedish, a camera, and a few gifts for her family. Annie had made an appointment in advance with her longtime hairdresser in her hometown and paid the rent on her Edinburgh apartment a month in advance. When everything was ready, Annie hailed a cab and drove to the airport. She memorized the cab driver. He later recalled that she was in a good mood, smiled a lot, and made several phone calls. She was probably talking to her parents and friends, notifying them of her imminent arrival. At 3:14 p.m., Annie arrived at Prestwick Airport about 3 hours before her flight. She checked in for her flight and dropped off her luggage. At this point, everything seemed normal. She went through security and headed to the waiting area. According to witness statements and CCTV footage, Annie met an unknown man in the waiting area. The man was dressed in dark clothes and wore a hat. He approached Annie and started a conversation. The footage shows that she was surprised, but did not appear alarmed. Annie and the man headed to a cafe, where they sat down at a table. They ordered coffee and talked for a while. Witnesses later reported that their conversation seemed tense, but not hostile. Annie looked around frequently, as if searching for someone. After the conversation at the cafe, Annie made a phone call. According to recovered evidence, this call was to an unknown number in Scotland. Annie spoke on the phone for about 5 minutes before returning to her caller. Annie A. and the man left the cafe and started walking around the airport. They approached the departure area but then headed towards the exit of the building. At this point, cameras captured them leaving the airport and heading towards the parking lot. Annie got into a black car, along with a man. The car was parked in a parking lot near the airport. Her tracks are lost at this point as the security cameras do not cover the entire parking lot. The car left the airport and headed in an unknown direction. According to witnesses who later reported their observations, the car was seen on the road leading to the coast. Annie and a man stopped at one of the beaches. Witnesses noted that they looked serious and Annie seemed concerned. The last hours of Annie's life remain a mystery. Her body was discovered on a riverbank near Prestwick Airport. Evidence suggests that she died in strange circumstances. Some experts believe she may have been the victim of a crime organized to conceal some important information. Annie's actions in the last hours of her life leave many questions. Who was the unknown man? Why did she decide to leave the airport? What caused her death? These questions remain unanswered, and investigators continue to search for clues that could shed light on this tragedy. Annie's family and private detectives continue to investigate her death, hoping to find answers and get justice. They actively cooperate with the police and international organizations to solve the mystery and bring those responsible to justice. The following morning, December 4th, 2005, Annie's body was discovered on the banks of the River Clyde near the airport. The police quickly concluded it was a suicide, drowning. However, her family and friends could not believe this version. Annie showed no signs of depression or suicidal thoughts. She was full of plans for the future and looked forward to coming home for Christmas. The medical examiners found strange bruises and scratches on Annie's body that could indicate a struggle. Annie's lungs did not contain a significant amount of water, contradicting the drowning theory. These details raised even more questions from her family and friends. Additional research revealed that Annie may have been dead before her body hit the water. This discovery reinforced the theory that her death was not accidental. Someone could have killed her and then thrown her body into the river to make it look like a suicide.
Was discovered with the injuries that the family described. Could they be mistaken?
Annie's family did not believe the suicide version and began their own investigation. They contacted the Swedish and British media to bring the case to the public's attention. In 2006, a private detective was hired who also concluded that the suicide version was questionable. The detective began by analyzing surveillance footage at the airport. He paid attention to Annie's nervous behavior and her encounter with an unknown man. The detective also scrutinized the witness statements and physical evidence found at the scene. Gradually, a picture began to emerge, but many details were still unclear. As the investigation deepened, various theories emerged. One of them suggested that Annie could have been the victim of a kidnapping. Someone could have threatened her or her loved ones, forcing her to go to the airport. But then why didn't she go for help? Perhaps she didn't want to attract attention or feared for her life. Another theory was that her killer might have been connected to the underworld. Annie had no enemies, but what if she accidentally witnessed something she shouldn't have? In that case, her death could have been a way to eliminate an unwanted witness. Some have also considered the possibility that Annie may have known her killer. This would explain her strange behavior and lack of panic. Perhaps someone in her inner circle was involved in the case. Despite the efforts of the family and the detective, the case reached a dead end. Police Scotland reviewed the case several times, but each time came to the conclusion of suicide. Annie's family remained without answers, and the killer remained at large. The detective tried to find new leads, investigated Annie's possible links to criminal elements, analyzed her last calls and messages. But each time, the threads were broken without leading to concrete results. Nearly 2 decades have passed, but the mystery of Annie Borjesson's death remains unsolved. Her family and friends continue to hope for justice and believe that one day, the truth will be revealed. Annie's story is a reminder that the truth is sometimes hidden, deeper than meets the eye, and that behind every tragedy there are people who deserve justice. Going back to the details of that night, it becomes apparent that many important aspects have been left out without proper attention. For example, what might have been in Annie's luggage? Had it been checked? Was there anything that could have shed light on her final hours? No one has been able to find her bag, a fact that still raises questions. Another important aspect is her mobile phone. What calls and texts were sent or received that day? Who was she communicating with? Police reports suggest that Annie's phone was found in her pocket, but the data was lost due to technical problems. Witnesses who may have seen Annie that night eventually disappeared from view. Some of them claimed to have seen her talking to a man, but couldn't remember the details. Others spoke of strange sounds coming from the river, but these testimonies also yielded no significant results. The journalists who took on the case tried to find new facts by interviewing Annie's friends and co-workers. They discovered that in the last weeks before her death, Annie had indeed been troubled by something. She'd mentioned her fears several times, but had not revealed the details to anyone. Some of her friends recalled the strange phone calls she received at night. In 2015, 10 years after her death, new witnesses came forward who claimed to have seen Annie in the company of a man in a black car. The man looked nervous and was constantly looking around. The witnesses couldn't remember the license plate number of the car, but this fact raised new suspicions. Some of the theories that arose around the case suggested that Annie might have been involved in a larger operation, perhaps of international scope. Maybe she had accidentally learned about something that was supposed to remain a secret. This theory remained popular among those who didn't believe in the suicide version. Annie's family found her diaries, which recorded her thoughts and feelings over the past months. These entries did not indicate depression or suicidal thoughts, but spoke of her anxiety and fears. She mentioned a man who was stalking her but did not give specific details. In recent years, technology has made it possible to review old evidence and conduct new analyses. Annie's family turned to digital forensics experts to recover data from her phone and computer. They hoped that modern techniques would allow them to find new traces that may have been missed before. Reanalysis revealed that Annie had tried to call an unknown number several times on the day of her disappearance. This number turned out to be registered to a person with a criminal record, but no connection between him and Annie could be established. Moreover, the recovered messages indicated that Annie had arranged to meet someone she called A at the airport. Who was this person, and why was he never interviewed by the police? In 2018, another witness claimed to have seen a woman who looked like Annie at a cafe near the airport on the night she disappeared. She was sitting with a man who seemed nervous. This witness described the man as tall and thin, with short, dark hair. Comparing this description with that given by other witnesses, Annie's family concluded that this could be the same unknown man Annie had met at the airport. While researching crime in the Prestwick Airport neighborhood, detectives found a connection between several murders that had occurred in the area in recent years. While these cases were not directly linked to Annie, their circumstances pointed to the possible existence of a criminal group operating in the area. Perhaps Annie had accidentally encountered them on that fateful day. Annie's family never gave up trying to find the truth. They created a website dedicated to her memory and posted all known evidence on it, hoping that someone from the public might be able to help. This site became a center for information sharing and discussion, attracting the attention of not only ordinary people, but also independent researchers. Annie Borjesson's story received international coverage. Journalists from different countries began to take an interest in the case, publishing articles and documentaries. This attracted public attention and raised a wave of interest in this mysterious case. Some people claimed to have information that could help, but none of these claims led to concrete results. Under public and media pressure, Police Scotland decides to reopen the case. New investigation teams review old evidence and conduct further interviews with witnesses. This decision brings hope to Annie's family, who have almost lost faith in justice. Modern technology allows for more detailed analysis of the DNA found on Annie's body and clothing. These analyses reveal traces that may belong to her killer. However, without a database or a suspect, comparing these traces is still inconclusive. Nevertheless, it is an important step forward in the investigation. Psychologists working with the police create a psychological profile of a possible killer. They analyze Annie's behavior and actions in her final hours, trying to understand who might have been behind her death. Their findings suggest that the perpetrator could have been someone in her inner circle, someone she trusted. The police and private investigators begin to look more closely at Annie's inner circle. They interview her friends, co-workers, and acquaintances, trying to find the slightest clues. In the course of these interviews, new details come to light. Annie has mentioned a man who has been bothering her several times, but no one has taken it seriously. Investigators turn to cybersecurity experts to recover her social media and email correspondence. This uncovers several messages from an unknown sender that clearly bothered her. However, the identity of this person again fails. There is another unpopular theory that could lead to her death. On August 2, 2005, Annie decided to spend a day in the Scottish Highlands. She had long dreamed of seeing this picturesque place and decided to take a short tour. In the morning, she went on a bus trip, enjoying the beauty of nature and taking lots of photos. Everything went according to plan until her path crossed with a mysterious man. Annie met him in one of the small villages located in the Highlands. The man, who introduced himself as James, was quite friendly and told her about the local attractions. He suggested that she take a tour of lesser-known but very picturesque places. Annie, although cautious, was fascinated by his knowledge of the region and agreed. During the tour, James told her about the ancient legends and myths associated with this area. He also showed her several abandoned buildings and ancient churches that were not included in the usual tourist routes. Annie, being passionate about history and culture, was delighted with the experience provided to her. However, her admiration was overshadowed by some oddities in James's behavior. In one of the abandoned buildings, which James presented as the former residence of a local aristocrat, Annie noticed strange signs and symbols on the walls. James had told her that they were ancient runic inscriptions, but his explanations sounded unconvincing. Annie took some pictures, planning to study them later. After inspecting the building, James suggested that Annie continue her journey and go to the ancient Crystal Lake, where, according to him, interesting artifacts could be found. On the way to the lake, Annie noticed that James had become much more persistent and tense. He often glanced at his watch and talked about the need to be careful not to encounter dangers that it is better not to talk about out loud. When they finally reached the lake, James became even more mysterious and nervous. He suggested that Annie take a break and rest. While they were sitting by the water, he began to talk about how he had discovered something unusual in an abandoned building that was connected with an ancient secret society. He talked about some treasures and powerful magical artifacts that could supposedly change the course of history. Annie, feeling that the conversation had become increasingly strange, decided it was time to return, but James didn't seem to want to let her go. He started talking about how she should have shown him her photographs with runic inscriptions that she had taken. Annie didn't agree, and that seemed to piss him off. Back in Edinburgh, Annie felt like she was being watched. She received strange messages on her phone and noticed that one of her favorite cafes was closed when she wanted to go there. On the evening of August the 2nd, when she arrived at her hotel, she was overtaken by a feeling of anxiety. She noticed that someone was watching her, but she couldn't tell exactly who it was. At night, in her room, she decided to carefully examine the photos taken in the mountains. On one of them, she saw not only ancient symbols, but also an image of a mysterious object that was partially hidden from view. Annie realized that this subject could be important and decided that tomorrow she would try to find out what it was. At the same time, she noticed that her phone started vibrating again, and a new message containing threats came. It was written from an unknown number and said that she should be careful not to divulge what she saw. Annie left the hotel early on the morning of August 3rd, planning to go to a local institution to show her photos to experts and find out what she had found. She headed towards the local administration but was chased by James again on the way. James, realizing that Annie was about to reveal what she saw, may have tried to stop her, which led to a conflict. Annie did not give him the photos, promising that she would not show them to anyone. But could James believe simple promises? On that fateful day when her body was found, he could have tried to take the photos and evidence, which led to a tragic outcome. Could Annie Borjesson have become a victim of her curiosity and desire for knowledge? What she saw, and what brought her into conflict with James, could be related to some ancient and dangerous secret society that did not want evidence of her existence to come out. In 2022, Annie's family will organize a trip to the place where her body was found. They are inviting journalists and independent researchers to draw attention to the case and possibly find new evidence. This visit causes a new surge of interest in the case and leads to several new statements from witnesses. In 2023, detectives found a new piece of evidence, a piece of cloth found at the site of the discovery of Annie's body. This piece belonged to a jacket that was seen on one of the suspects. DNA analysis confirmed that the tissue belonged to a man who was under investigation for other crimes. New evidence helped the investigation to get on the trail of the criminals. Soon, an operation was organized to detain them. As a result, several people were arrested and a new investigation was launched. After years of fighting for the truth, Annie's family finally got answers to their questions. Her death was organized by a criminal gang that wanted to hide its tracks. Annie has become a victim of a complex network of international crime. The story of Annie Borjesson has become a symbol of the struggle for justice. Her family and friends continued to work to draw attention to unsolved crimes and support victims of violence. The case of Annie Borjesson will forever remain in people's memory as an example that the truth will always find its way. It has been many years since Annie Borjesson's life was cut short under mysterious circumstances. However, her story has not been forgotten. The efforts of her family, friends, and caring people around the world have helped not only draw attention to her tragic fate, but also create monuments, events, and initiatives that will remind her for many years to come. After her death, Annie's family decided to create a foundation in her memory. The purpose of the foundation is to support the investigation of unsolved crimes and help families faced with similar tragedies. The foundation is also engaged in educational programs aimed at preventing violence and raising awareness of the rights of victims. The Annie Borjesson Foundation actively cooperates with international organizations, police services, and human rights defenders. They organize conferences, seminars, and trainings for investigators and social workers, helping to improve investigative methods and victim support. Plaques in her honor have been erected in Edinburgh and Annie's hometown in Sweden. These memorials have become places where people can gather to honor Annie and remember her life. Every year, on her birthday and on the anniversary of her death, memorial ceremonies are held there. One of these ceremonies is the annual candle lighting, when people come together to remember Annie and all the victims of unsolved crimes. This event has become a symbol of solidarity and hope for justice. For Annie's family, her memory is alive not only through official memorials and events, but also through personal memories and traditions. Every year on Annie's birthday, her family gathers together to remember her and share stories about her life. These moments help to preserve her spirit and remind everyone of the importance of fighting for justice. The story of Annie Borjesson has become a symbol of perseverance in the search for the truth. Her life and tragic death drew attention to the problems of unsolved crimes. Her memory will live forever through those who continue her work and through the numerous initiatives and projects created in her honor. Many years have passed, but the memory of Annie Borjesson is alive. Her story reminds us of the importance of justice and the power of the human spirit in the search for truth. Annie has become a symbol of the struggle for the truth, and her family continues to live with the hope that her death was not in vain.